was scrolling through the r/ask Reddit subreddit and I found some tough questions, so I thought let me make a video on some of the hardest. First one's from a user called Wolderin. I hope I said that correctly. People in your 30s, what price have you paid for being lazy in your 20s? I think this one's a bit of a hard question, but this is probably the best way I'll approach it. I think the first thing is a lot of people tend to get jobs in their mid-20s, but due to complacency, they don't try to push themselves throughout those 20s. So in the next 5 to 10 years, when people are retiring and internal promotions are happening, they just don't have the skills to get those promotions. So when they're 30, they have to end up working that extra bit more harder to get those promotions. Another advice that people in their 30s have told me is to make sure that you save well and ensure that all these bad habits that you might have that cause you to spend a lot, try to minimize them as much as possible. The biggest issue that we're facing as Gen Z is being able to save well, because unfortunately when we rent and when we buy the most basic things, it's just so expensive. So that's another tip that I've learned, and I think I'd like to share that with you guys as well. The third tip I'd probably say is to do your self-improvement in your 20s, because when you're in your 30s, you fall into many habits and you fall into many routines, and it's very hard to force self-improvement. So that's something that I've been told and something that I'm going to keep in mind going forward. The next question comes from user KeyClimate5038. What habit will die with Gen Z? I think this was probably the hardest question for me to answer, but I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. I think the first thing is cultural norms that don't make sense. So there's probably many cultural norms that we have to do on a daily basis, but I think when we have kids and when we're married and, when we move on eventually, I feel like these cultural norms will no longer matter. Some are good, and I guess some are bad as well. So that's one thing that I think will die with Gen Z. I think the second thing is not questioning their mainstream narrative. There's certain things that we hear and our parents, etc., are very biased towards. But now with independent journalism and us seeing it on our screens, many things that we're seeing on our screens, then I feel that this will no longer be the case and we'll constantly question the mainstream narrative. The third thing that will probably die with Gen Z is digital illiteracy. I feel that, our parents and our grandparents, they struggle with using YouTube, using WhatsApp, etc., calling. But I feel like since we grew up and essentially were born with technology, we no longer need to worry about new technologies that will come, because we're already used to adapting to all these different technologies. I found this question quite hard, so let me know how it was in the comments. The next question comes from user JDMXJoe. What would you do with a free $1,000? I think what I would do is probably buy gold or give that $1,000 to my mum or dad. I think they deserve it more than me. But I think this question goes for a bigger point. Sometimes we might have extra money in our salary that is going towards savings. So what we could do with that money is try to put that aside in savings or in some sort of investment account to make sure that that money doesn't depreciate over time. The reason why I say gold and silver, because they tend to be very strong and stable assets, whereas other things such as Bitcoin and other places to invest can be quite volatile. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're someone that's quite risk-taking and ready to take that risk, it's up to you. But for someone that is a bit worried about investments, etc., I feel like the best place to put your investments, if you're in this category, is gold and silver. The next question is from user Tina Lives. If someone gave you $100,000 today, what would you do with it? I think what I would do, and this is what I tend to do with my salary, is to split it into different categories. So for this $100,000, I split it into $25,000 each. So the first one I would put it into is investment. So the $25,000, the first category, into investment. The next $25,000 is for potential equipment for a business venture that I might want to pursue, or a hobby that I want to pursue and I can make money off that. The next one will probably be for emergency funds, for example, medical bills, helping out family, or just some unexpected turn of events. And the last one, the last $25,000, will probably be on some sort of charity or just to enjoy myself. Because holding money, I feel like, and just saving it for a rainy day, that rainy day may never come, number one, and you might always do well, but it's very likely that rainy day can come, so do bear that in mind. But also, I feel like we do need to enjoy what little we have, because, you've earned that money and, there's nothing wrong with spending it in the way that you please. But for financial management more generally, the best advice I was given is to reasonably spend. There's nothing wrong with, buying something that's new, buying something that's you've really wanted to buy for a long time. But buying what's in your means is very important. A lot of people I know tend to buy things, but on credit. I think that's bad because if you're not able to pay back on time, then your credit score's messed up and you just put yourself in unnecessary debt. So I think this is probably the best financial advice I've been given, and it's really helped me out. The next question is from user Icy Mode 620. What would you do if you became a millionaire? What I would do as soon as I reach my million is probably buy 2 houses worth 500,000 and make that passive income. If that money is good, then I'd eventually retire early, and that's pretty much it. And what I would do in that time is just do things that I enjoy, spend time with family, do some leisure activities, etc. But a bigger point for those landlords out there, I feel that fair renting is so important. If I'm doing good, for example, then I'd be a bit more lenient for those who are in the position that I was in, because it is so hard in all of our countries to find affordable private renting. But I'd also at the same time try to find trustworthy renters that don't fall late on payments regularly and just have a general trust with them. And you have such a good relationship with them that they become like family. But I think when people do get this much money, especially people that just went from very low to very high in a short amount of time, gambling becomes a big problem. And I'd say in my personal life that I hope to never gamble, even if it is just $1 or £1. Because eventually what happens is you do £1, then you might win £10, etc. And then it just becomes about the win and you lose so much. I've seen so many people gambling their life savings away, and it's really affected them and it's affected their families. So that's just something that I would try not to do in that position, or even the position that I'm in right now. User Hawkin Labs, I hope I said that correctly. What's a harsh truth you only understood after becoming an adult? So I'm going to answer this many times, so just letting you guys know in advance. The biggest thing is to understand how much difficulty our parents had to put food on the table. And that's one thing you only learn when you become an adult yourself or you become a parent. Those people who came from low-income families, they had parents who were working long hours or even had to do 2 jobs just to support the family. I think although we are aware to some extent of their hardships, it's only when we become adults and we have to fend for ourselves and even fend for others as well that we actually understand what they went through. And I'm really thankful for my parents. Despite what they had to do, I'm sure all of our parents, despite that, they put a smile on their face and they tried to make us have the best childhood they could. Obviously, they weren't perfect, they made mistakes, but honestly, I'm eternally grateful for that. The second point, and it's linked to the first point, is I never understood how bad bills are until I started paying bills myself. I feel like parents should break down the finances that they have to pay and they have to manage to teach children financial literacy, because it can be a big shock when we grow up. When you add it up, we've got phone bills, sometimes we're going to help out our parents, or if we're living alone, we've got gas bills, water bills, and any other costs that are associated with living, essentially. Even things like food. We don't realise how much it is until we actually go and do the food shop ourselves with our own money. Another thing I wish I could change in hindsight is to avoid teenage tantrums, because that doesn't help parents. You know, it's their first time as well. They're already stressed and no one appreciates what they do. And having a teenager that doesn't listen to them nor help them doesn't make anything easier. When they tell us to do chores, get groceries, and things like doing our own laundry, it's not a punishment. It's to teach us how to be responsible and how to fend for ourselves. The fact that a parent is making us go through these things is to strengthen us and give that resolve, because there'll be a time when they're not there, God forbid, and we won't know what to do. And if they taught us well, then we'd know exactly what we need to do and how to carry ourselves. Skills such as cleaning and cooking is hard, and just being able to fend for yourself. So if you're not taught this by your parents because they're doing it for you, try to learn these before you move out so you don't struggle. Another thing that I learned recently is that work isn't enjoyable all the time. It's just where you get your money. It can be enjoyable for some people, but for the majority of people, and let me know in the comments, it's just what you do to earn money. Some colleagues can be really nice and some colleagues can be a real pain, but it's just about getting through it and keeping focused. I also learned that jealousy is real, and you don't need to tell everyone your achievements. Some people are haters inside and they might even say it. So just avoid people that you can just sense their negative energy, and just tell your achievements and celebrate your achievements with those who you love. Adding to this, if you don't have a good support system, you have to fend alone in this world. Having a good family support network as well as friends you can vent to, and just essentially visiting them and enjoying your leisure time helps a lot, especially with dealing with stress and that general stress relief. But at the same time, I feel that it is important to be comfortable being on your own, because some people are very dependent on their friends, and this can be quite dangerous for your well-being. especially when friends become busy or they just move out of town. So essentially, having a support network but not being overly reliant on them is probably the best way forward. It's a middle ground between the both extremes. And the final lesson I learned from the many lessons, as you can see, is how hard it is to keep sibling ties and just relationship with family. When you move out, it's very hard to keep ties with siblings and general family members because you're not living with them anymore. So it's important that you make that extra effort now and later on as well when you eventually move out. Instant messaging has helped, and I just can't imagine how hard it was in the past when we didn't have this. But I think maybe people live near each other due to lower housing prices, so maybe it wasn't a problem then. The last question comes from user eggkind5080. What industries or businesses are likely to boom in the next 5 years? I think the first industry that will likely boom is the electricity industry. If we see the shift in many countries from fossil fuels to electricity, the infrastructure needed is not adequate right now. So I feel like the push by many big businesses is going to be installing chargers and many different infrastructure to make sure that these new cars can be supported. For this, I understand that minerals and metals will be needed for these electric batteries, and this is going to be in a big demand. And a lot of this is found in quote-unquote third world countries. I think that's a silly name to name these countries, but anyway, I think there will be a global sort of race for these minerals and for these metals, and bigger countries will try to assert influence over these countries for these minerals. I think the next industry that will probably boom in the next 5 years is the renewable energy market. So a lot of countries are moving towards solar energy, wind energy, etc. A lot of governments are putting money into these sort of industries. So a lot of companies will try to get that funding and try to use that funding and profit from that essentially. Do justice if I didn't mention this industry, and I'm sure we know which industry this is. The artificial intelligence, essentially the AI industry. And we already see how much money is being pumped into AI from all these big companies to make sure that their services are efficient and we can use these AI chatbots. And as we see with the introduction with the internet, it can also be used for many bad things as well. But essentially, I feel like the AI market is just going to blow up in the next 5 years. I think the most positive out of all these industries that are going to boom is the food industry. I think big chains are going to expand in these next 5 years, but also smaller businesses that are localized are going to also do well. I'm sure you guys have seen in many YouTube videos and many shorts that there's a lot of businesses that are local which are opening up and they're just doing very well. And this is just a great success for local people and the local economy. Another industry that unfortunately is going up is the healthcare medicine industry. Especially in the US, the cost for healthcare is going up and medicine as well. So this will probably be a huge market that people are going to capitalize on in the next few years. Gaming also is a big industry that is going to boom in the next 5 years, no doubt. But I feel like a lot of retro games are becoming popular due to streamers and just the originality of these games. Whereas these bigger games are forgetting the small things that people love. I think we all need a nice co-op zombie game that we can play with our friends and with our family. But these bigger companies are all about pushing a story, big maps, which eventually get boring. And the originality and those things that we used to love are no longer there because these games are being made by big businesses which don't understand what we like. I just realised how long this list is going to be. I'll link it in the description below. The next industry that's probably going to boom is the elderly care industry. Across many countries, the aging population has just soared with more elderly people that the state needs to look after. And the care workers available aren't a lot. So I think both private funding and public funding will be there to make more elderly homes, and we'll probably see a rise in care homes, etc. And this is probably going to be one of those big businesses in the next 5 years. Just 2 more, I promise you guys. The next one is likely going to be cybersecurity and VPNs. With growing people getting doxxed and hacked, I think that the push for cybersecurity and VPNs are kind of needed. But at the same time, VPNs that are not secure can also leak key information. As a lot of countries have introduced the under 16 ban for social media and a lot to follow, I feel that a lot of under 16s are going to try circumvent that and use VPNs, etc. So that market is going to go up. I think the last industry that's really going to do well is the online education industry. As a school system is failing in many places in the world, people are now going online to revise and learn new content. Back in high school, I remember having to do a lot of the content that I missed in high school, learning near to half of the syllabus online. due to not being able to finish the content. So I feel many educators are going to move on to the online platform and really do well there because of the need. But just to finish off, I know a lot of businesses that will always stay the same. Like venues, people always need venues for marriages, for just social activity. Waste disposal, jobs which require building, and other professions that we can't get rid of, such as plumbers and electricians. So that's probably the best safe place to go when it comes to, fortifying your business long term. Hope you guys enjoyed these questions. I really did struggle to answer these questions, so I answered them to the best of my ability. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below.